Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect One Word Conversations. One Word Conversations is a self-discovery and relationship building conversation. So it's our way to look at the language that we're using and how we relate to each other. And so I do that with one word because we can make a connection in one word and we can make a disconnection through one word. So if we're willing to have a conversation with that word, we can strengthen our relationships. So one way that I spotlight what's available at IamWilliamBrown.com is our U cards. And our U cards are intention setting cards and a game and a level up card. Just go to IamWilliamBrown.com, the store, and get your U cards and journals and all the other things that are available for you. So the cards that I picked to set the intention for this conversation is I am kind, you are brave. Always love when that shows up because there is going to be a moment within this conversation where I need to be brave. So there it is. And the quote card is, there is no one newer than you. This is the time where I invite you to like, share, comment, ask questions, subscribe, do all those things to let me know that this and other conversations are bringing value to you. So I'm gonna do it. The conversation today is the word vote. There's a lot of ways that it's showing up. I mean, if you're on any of your social media feeds, you're reminded every moment to do it. If you're watching TV, you see all that other kind of stuff. If you're in the United States, but I just wanted to see how that this word is landing for me, and just kind of share that, and just go from there. So I notice that anytime that I have what could be a difficult conversation or a conversation where I would need to be more of myself and not my labels, right? I call on my friend Kerra, and she helps a brother out. So, so I will bring in my guests so we can have a conversation. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great. This is the moment where I invite my guests to introduce themselves, however it feels comfortable to them.
So, for this conversation, I will introduce myself as Kerra Bolton. I'm a writer, a filmmaker, a foodie, and currently an expat.
Okay. Well, that's I get that. You know what? There's at least three of those that I want to embrace sooner rather than later. And so I guess the and I guess the game is which one of those, right? You could possibly guess. But so the question of today is, how does the word vote land for you?
Well, for me, it lands as both a strategy and survival, and also an ancestral marker.
Hmm.
So, if I can go into detail, as a strategy, voting is just one of many different strategies that we need to employ for, to me, to create a fairer, more just world. As survival, in the current situation, I do not believe that the current administration um, either wants my continued survival or values me as a human being. People can
Right.
disagree with that, but that's my interpretation, and they can't disagree with what I think is true for me. And
Absolutely.
then the third one is an ancestral marker. So in the course of my work, both in my book and my film, I am doing some ancestor tracking, and I found that I have grandfathers on both the matrilineal and patrilineal sides of my family who were among the first African Americans to register to vote after the U.S. Civil War. they swore an oath to the United States and then registered to vote in 1867, both sides of the family in Georgia. So voting is also part of my heritage and my lineage.
Wow. Uh, I there is I did follow up with a last conversation that you had to do some 20 23andMe work. I haven't gotten anything back yet, but I really, it's like I'm like looking for those ancestral markers, right? To kind of justify for me to show up, so I can say, okay, this is, I believe I already have them. They're already a part of my knowing, but to kind of see it in writing and to have that, the first, um, African Americans to register to vote. Wow. That's
On both sides, not
on
just one
both
side,
sides.
both
So
sides.
it is. So it is important. I get so caught up. For me, I get so caught up with language and how it shows up. And so this is how it shows up for me. That yes, I believe it's a strategy. However, um, it doesn't resonate with me when people say that um, your vote is your voice. So if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. And I believe that uh, my vote is part of my voice. And I think the reason why for me it doesn't show up as my voice is because within that it seems like if I think that that is my voice, the only time that they want to hear my voice is on election time. Other than that, they don't care what the hell I say. And it's as if that um, throughout their term, I pretty much have nothing to say. It's like you've made your decision, you made your choice, deal with it, type of thing. And so I want to be able to really have this holistic, engagement with my vote, but at the same time, I guess reconcile how it's how I feel that it's used and dismissed, and I don't know. There's a lot of other things that cause me to feel that it's not as important as every once in a while they say it is.
Mm-hmm. Um, Democracy as an ideal and as expressed in the United States does not work. Democracy as a means of governing in which those with the most power, most resources rule, with a class of people who have sort of given up certain abilities to make decisions. That's working as it should, right?
Right.
And the reason that you and other people feel like your vote is not your voice because it's only called upon every 4 or 2 years is that the system is designed to keep you out of the decision-making process,
Mm,
and that we leave the decision-making of extremely complex issues to a certain group of people who may or may not reflect our lived experiences or a wider body of knowledge required to make those decisions.
right.
And we feel disembodied from a process that genuinely or generally not I want to say predicts, but controls how we live our lives from day to day. And so I think for democracy and voting to truly work as a form of voice, it has to be inclusive. And I don't just mean by race or gender, but I mean in the ways that we participate in the democratic process and
Right.
what that means and the access that we have to our politicians, which is not a lot because of the way things happen. And also, most people are busy living their lives, so they don't
Right.
have time. But then you also have to make time because I think like you can't complain about a system that you are not engaged in. So
Right.
that's the other half of that. And we can talk about it whenever you're ready, but I have some ideas about citizen engagement and what that would look like in a democratic system.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'll bring up later within this conversation. It's like all these things are being tabled. About my desire to just kind of jump in head first. All the way at the top. The absurdity of that to run for president this year. But the one thing that really resonates with me that it's not working, our representative government is not working, is because when I look at, I have a conversation around labels, right? So I believe our labels are our representatives, of who we are. They're not us. They're our representatives. It's like how we're showing up. And it doesn't work for me when my representative shows up, and it's not working in my governance, right? It's not, because it's it's this feeling that, hey, I got your voice, now you gave it to me,
Hmm.
and I'll do whatever the hell I want, right? Type of thing. And it's like that's how my labels show up. It's like all right, you're showing up at this label, you know, you don't have control anymore.
Yeah.
And this is how it's going to show up. And it's like, how can we um, kind of, I don't want to say force, or maybe that's what it is. I think some of my desire is to, lead, ignite a revolution to how we're being governed and how we kind of live our life and go through our life. Because, like you were saying, you want to be engaged in how you're being governed, and at the same time, you want to stay in your life. And the reason why I've stopped watching, I thought I considered myself a political junkie, as they say, would always kind of listen to, everybody and kind of like, okay, that's crazy, or okay, that makes sense. And just like kind of be in it, or what they showed us, about it. That's, I don't, it's not a conspiracy for me, but it's like, I don't have time to go into the deep, dark understandings of everything unless I'm like, behind the curtain, and I'm just not. But at the same time, I saw that the way I was showing up in my life was being dictated how I engaged in political conversations and commentary. And it was like, yeah, this stuff is, I need to go back to my life, right? Because this stuff, will have me crazy. It'll have me up all night. It'll have me worried. It'll have me doing all kind of crazy things. And I was like, but I voted, you know, but I still felt that I didn't have a say.
Yeah. One of the ideas that I've been working on with Ted Wachtel, who is my mentor in restorative practices, through Ted's organization called Building a New Reality, buildinganewreality.com, is the idea of citizens' assemblies. We're actually doing monthly information and conversation talks about what is a citizens' assembly and how we can form one and how we can use them as a system of participatory democracy and decision making in everyday life. Our next one is November 21st at 12 p.m. Eastern Time.
Mm.
And the idea of a citizens' assembly also comes from the idea of sortition, where you have a random group of people come together. James Fishkin called it a nation in one room, where you have a random people come together. They're from different life experiences, age groups, race, gender, the whole gamut. And you give them a briefing book that has been thoroughly worked through before the event. And the briefing book has information on a specific issue, the pros, the cons, the details. And the idea is you give people information, you have them meet, and they come up with a series of recommendations. We call it the wisdom of crowds, based on a book by James, I think his name is James Sarawicki, where the crowd can actually, under the right conditions, make informed, intelligent decisions
Right.
on complex issues. And so through having this, and they would serve as an advisory board to maybe your local school board or the legislature on a state level. I believe in the UK, there were some talks about replacing the House of Lords with sort of this house of this sort of random sortition model. And
Wow.
there are all kinds of little details that you can get into about how that would work. But the idea is to promote this participatory decision making and and democracy in everyday life by giving citizens an active role in it and influence and giving them access to accurate information, because a lot of times we're making decisions based on our assumptions and our emotions
Right.
without having the facts there. And now that identity politics has become identification politics,
Right.
where people across the spectrum, not just progressives, but across the spectrum now consider their political identification who they are,
Right.
instead of one aspect, or as you said, it's become a label.
Yeah. I am so down for a different way of approaching the challenges of our community, and I think it's a part of my campaign that I'm working on, and that I'll be kind of rolling out of the Everything is Possible campaign to really get people to believe that everything is possible, and then be in that, right? To be in the school boards, to be in the city, and as I love as an advisory role. But the first thing that I was thinking that came to mind, the politicians aren't going to give up that power, you know?
Everybody says that,
Right.
and the way you kind of sneak in with that is that you use very controversial issues. So like
Mm.
politicians don't want to vote on controversial issues, but if they have a citizens assembly who recommended a course of action on a controversial issue, they can blame the citizens assembly. They can say, oh, well, the citizens have called for these actions to be taken. I mean, Ireland did a citizens assembly on abortion.
Mm.
And Washington State is doing a citizens assembly on climate change, and the climate change one is being endorsed by state lawmakers. So they've seen ways that it may benefit them, but we have to start somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Um yeah, look, I'm getting ready to start a project of Everything is Possible. So this is possible, right? If I, this
It's
is a
already
part,
it's already
right.
being
It's
done
it's
all over the
our it's
world.
right. And so it's just going from there. Here's two things that are coming up for me that I've already exercised my rights. I voted early, in my state, so I'm done. I feel um at peace with the choices that I've made. It's like, sometimes that hasn't been the case, right? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
what the hell did I just do? Right. Right. And I think there was one thing that I don't know if you said in a post or something, or it was like um let's just say something I believe you would say. Let's just say that it was like voting while black, right?
Yes,
It's like
I did say that.
it's like, so it's like, when I was there, I was like, wow, yeah, it's a totally it comes with a totally different weight.
Yes.
It's
People
not
don't
just voting, right?
No, people don't get it. They're like, "Oh, well, I wish that my affiliated party had a candidate that I really liked, and I can't really get behind this person, and they have X, Y, and Z flaws, and maybe I'll do a third party vote, or I want to remain integral." And it's like, I'm voting for the survival of myself and the people that I love and my family and my friends. I don't have time for this.
Right.
And except for 2008 and 2012, I never had an election where I fully adored the candidate and was so grateful that they were running for office. I've always voted for the lesser of the two evils. I've always held my nose and voted.
Right. And so that brings me to the another question that I have, or something that I want to bring in this conversation. And one, because of your experience and that we've talked before, and what I thought I wanted in my life, but I learned that I didn't, and it's the media. And where do you believe, what role do you believe the media plays in helping us really understand or value the vote, if that's the right question?
Yeah. So I ended up being a political reporter. I started off as a general assignment reporter, but I was a political journalist for about 8 years, 8 or 9 years. And then before I became the director of communications, outreach, and oppositional research for the North Carolina Democratic Party. And when I was a reporter, the election coverage was about the issues. So I would interview school board candidates. I would interview state legislative candidates about the issues. And sometimes I would follow an issue all the way through the campaign cycle. So maybe it would be education or environment or healthcare or whatever the hot topic was. But what I've noticed in reporting, that it's become less about the issues and more about the personality of the candidates.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that is media friendly, or I don't know if that is a result of the electorate itself, because we like to point and say, well, that's the media or that's the politicians, but
Mhm.
they're responding to us. I mean, media is generated by advertising dollars. And if people aren't watching, if they aren't clicking, if they aren't reading, then if there's no participation by the electorate, then the media doesn't make its money. So it's a symbiotic relationship that the media and the public have. And I don't know if at some point, if reporting on the issues themselves didn't draw as many people or didn't draw as large of an audience than the personality. So it's all about like audience identification. What
Right.
instead of Trump, and I'm going to use both because I don't want to alienate people, but instead of focusing on what Trump's policies are, it's all about his personality and how that personality is perceived or interacts with other people. The same thing with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's less about their policies and more about, well, Kamala is, half Jamaican and half Indian, and Joe Biden had these tragedies happen in his life. And so we're voting by identification rather than policy.
Right. And it feels like, and I guess the other thing is that there is a lot of other parties, are are candidates that don't get the press
Mhm.
because of because it's not about the issues, it's about the personalities. And there's like, look, we don't know you, right? And so, and we're not going to, and basically, and we're not going to do a profile of you. So, so it's like, it's like, and I'm showing my age now, and because I talked to my wife about this, about entertainment and just kind of how we show up, in media and all that other kind of stuff. Johnny Carson made stars. You get on his show and you got an audience because of who he was and the audience that he had.
Mhm.
Now it feels like most of the times people don't get on the news or on the show unless they have an audience. Because you're bringing your audience to me, you know, to
Yes, that's exactly right.
and it's like, so it's like it's not a, and so I don't know if we have gotten out of the creating star business, or something, or I I believe, and I've said it before, about, our the current president, is that there's some parts of the media that created him by laughing at him and making him the joke and giving him the airtime, and 2015 and 16, and all that. And then it was like, holy crap, people are listening to this, nonsense. And then, you try to, like, I don't want to say destroy, but then kind of say, whoa, 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 wait a second. We didn't, we were just trying to make this a joke. My opinion, we are kind of wanted to highlight the absurdity of all this stuff, and you're taking it serious because there are still people that believe that if it's on TV or if it's on the internet, it's the truth, right? And it's like that ship has run its course long time ago, but there is still that mentality that we have. If it's in writing or if it's on the internet or if it's on TV, somebody, have vetted this, right? And in some cases, that's just not the case. And when we're giving up our voice, our vote, how can we get the information that we need to really make, issue-based decisions?
You have a lot packed in there, and I will
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to explain as best I can, at least from my point of view.
Okay.
As a reporter, and when I was a reporter, I worked for a small paper in Western North Carolina. So, I wasn't on a big city daily or some national newspaper. So I mean, like an ordinary reporter. I had to practice discernment because you would have third-party candidates and different people coming to you and being like, well, pitching you for a profile piece. And you're only one person, and people talk about the media as this big corporate conglomerate, but it's made of many people who are making individual decisions, and like every other business, especially during COVID, has been impacted in terms of dollars. And so you have to think about, like, where do I spend my time? Do I spend my time talking about a known quantity that many people know, or do I spend my time, with this unknown quantity that people may not know, and lose focus? So there's a lot of different decisions that happen in newsrooms that most people are not privy to. They think that, like, some word comes down from on high that you have to cover X, Y, and Z, and everybody goes marches their paces. So that's not how it happens. The other part of that is, how do you make policy or issue-based decisions? A lot of times, non-affiliate nonprofits are really the ones that are tracking the issues. And so if you're interested in conservation, the Sierra Club or whatever the constellation of environmental groups have usually had some kind of scorecard. Now, it's skewed toward the mission and values of their organization. So you kind of almost have to piece the information together for yourself, which is not a
Right.
bad thing because it requires some effort. And we think that being a citizen is not a participatory activity. We look at
Right.
politics as a spectator sport, and it requires our engagement, and it should. And if we can make time for cat videos, we can make time for democracy.
Right. Yeah, I totally get it. When I was waiting in line to vote, and there were some people in line that were complaining how long it was, and it was like, dude, it's like an hour and a half. Relax. I'm sure there's a lot of this is not for what we're doing right now. This is not, I didn't say it out loud, but it was just like, wow, really? You don't got an hour and a half to kind of to vote, to share, to really, I mean, you're here, but you're bitching about it. And it's some cases, I think that's what we do too, right? It's like we're it's like, because we and I said this, and like I said, I don't and I recognize that I don't put periods. I put commas, and so I'll try to do better within our conversation to kind of stop a thought and just kind of go from there. But there is this feeling that we show up to the polls, or we show up in these election seasons, scared, anxious, and make decisions and make our votes, from that place. And then when we get crazy, because we're putting out that crazy energy, we're surprised, right? And so am just trying to figure out. I Because I tried to be as calm as possible when I was in the line, right, and just kind of be with the time. But because there's no anger. But how can we just really show up and not from our fears? Like, there's a quote from Nelson Mandela. It's like our choices, right? May our choices be a place of love, and not a place of our fears, or something, a variation of that. But our fears show up because we stay in that place. And I think too often we're voting with fear more than anything else.
Well, part of it is the strategy,
Mm,
both by the major political parties to stoke an emotion. Strong emotions compel things. So we saw in 2008, when President Barack Obama used the themes of hope and change to stir a positive feeling around voting, that it, and also the possibility of participating in a historic election, got people to vote. But then that was over, and we kind of went back to negative campaigning. And negative campaigning, fear produces action. And to answer your question, in a very naive way, I think that we need to start believing in each other again.
mm, right.
One of the top complaints I hear when I talk about citizens assembly is, well, I don't trust the guy over there. I mean, he doesn't even wear a mask, so why would I trust him on complex issues? And it's like, well, you're not just trusting the guy that's not wearing the mask. It's a group of people, but we don't believe in each other. We don't trust each other. We don't believe that in the best of human nature. If you scroll through your social media feed, it's a bunch of people complaining about how other people are awful, how everything is terrible.
Right.
And um, and I'm
Well, they're
not
being awful, right?
and I'm not saying that we all need to be happy and not deal with the issues. But if you don't have faith in the fellow people, how do you expect things to move forward? And I
Right.
don't mean like replacing faith in God with faith in people. I just mean, like, if you can't trust your neighbor, how do you think democracy is going to work?
Right. Yeah. I think it's really showing up that way, that I don't believe that we recognize the level of mistrust. I don't know if distrust is a word, but um, that we have for each other. And so that is causing us not to be there for each other.
Mhm.
And it is, um, I'm trying to bring some levity to this. I knew before Corona that there were a lot of people that were nasty and weren't washing their hands. You know, you know, you know, you,
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
but I just kind of, okay, just kind of just maneuver myself around. And so it doesn't surprise me that, people are bitching and moaning about wearing a mask or washing their hands, right? So it doesn't, so it's like, how can I um, really, you know, love myself, love my neighbor, show up for them, even if they not yet understand the importance of their actions or inactions. And it's, some days are easier than others, right? But for the most part, it's like just me and you, Jesus. I don't know about the, I don't know about you people.
I know, like, Jesus, take the wheel, because I can't do this with my fellow human beings. But the commandment that God gives us is to love one another.
Right,
To love Him and to love one another, and it takes effort. I don't think it was like an easy command, and
right,
I suspect that God knew that it was not going to be easy, but that's what He requires of us.
right. And so within that love, I think that has to be a part of our voting. That's a part,
Mhm.
that's a voice. I think for me, my marriage transformed when I had an expansive understanding of love, right? Instead of just, Hollywood, and it's supposed to show up this way all the time with, and when I realized that there are some hard moments with love, right? Then, I could like really be in my marriage. And I think, um, I, I posted a while ago that do you love America or or hate America or something like that, and I think um, the question wasn't. I don't think love and hate are opposite. They're like opposites. I think the opposite of love is indifference. And so, and I, and I, and I think that's a dangerous place to be. And I think there's a lot of people, it feels like that they are there, that they don't even see you, right? So, it is, and that's a very difficult place to have a conversation where, with people that don't even see you. And so for me to realize that there have been times in my life as being American that I hate this place. And it's more that I feel that I am disappointed in this place not living up to everything that it says about what this place is. And so the more that I am able to speak from that, the more that I can get to a place where I can love America and not just say it just because that's what we say. So people, the government don't come after us, I mean, that fear, type of thing. But it, it is a place, the more that I embrace, that, and this is kind of crazy, and but I'm going to say this, that because I hate this place, that I am going to be engaged on a level so it can be a better place. Do you
Mhm.
understand? So it can
Yeah.
be a place that I love, instead of wash my hands and I'm out, type of thing. And but there is sometimes that, for our survival, we have to tap out, and kind of like, I'll love you from a distance. I've said that to family members, right? It's like, I love you, but don't come over to my house, right? I mean, it's like,
So
uh,
do you think that's what I did as an expat?
no, I think you are, I think there is a level of people who are an expat, and that is a label that I really want to embrace. So I just spilled it out there, not as a place to run away from, but a place to get ownership of myself, to be more of myself, and not just use the place that I was born as a place that brings me life or gives me life. So the the idea of America is great. The reality of it is not so great. So why would I continue to live in a reality that is not supporting me? So no, I think there are some people that have that label, that it is running. It is saying, you know what, you know, I I'm out. I'm just gonna to do that. But I also believe within that there is a place of, y- because we say within the self-help community is, be in place that gives you joy. Find, do all the things that bring you life. And it's like, if your country, if the environment that you're in doesn't do that, you can't just go, well, I'll just kind of put up with that. So, and then bitch and moan that my life sucks, type of thing. So, I hope I answered that question. For
Yeah, 'cause, yeah, you did before I got a chance to sort of answer it myself a little bit is that, I grew up in a small community in South Jersey across the bridge from Philadelphia. and going to see the Liberty Bell and Constitutional Hall and discuss the Declaration of Independence. And that was very much a part of the fabric of my childhood. And I believed in America's promises, and what the idea that it could be. And I dedicated much of my life to doing just that. I mean, I became a newspaper reporter. I considered that my job was to give people as accurate information as I had available to me at that moment so that they could make better decisions on how they live their lives.
Right.
I evolved from that to working to the Democratic Party because it was at the time the place where I thought that I could help give people information about candidates and issues and elect those candidates to achieve certain policy ends that I thought were important. When I stopped doing that, I evolved to being a political communications consultant. So instead of working with one political party, I used issues. So for me, my areas of expertise were Medicaid reform and education choice, and both of those are very different. Like one's far progressive, and one is considered conservative. And so I worked with organizations and lobbyists based on issues that I thought were transformative, and tried to help them communicate better with the media, their constituencies, and policymakers. And I reached a level where that was done with me, where I just couldn't do it anymore. At the same time, we heard and saw more instances of Black people being killed by police officers, and I have a very intimate connection with that. And the reaction of my white friends terrified me,
Mm.
and the United States became more of an increasingly volatile place, and I felt unsafe. And so, even before the 2016 election, I had made a decision to move abroad because one, I felt like I did everything in my power to try to make the United States live up to its promises. And each avenue that I tried had its limitations, and I could only get but so far.
Right.
And the other part was like emotionally and psychologically, it was damaging me. And so I went to, as you said, with the self-help movement, I went to where the love was, or at least I removed myself from that situation. And the interesting part, because I had a discussion with one of my friends last week, was he said, you physically left the United States, but you haven't mentally left it. And so I'm just as steeped in conversations about voting, the latest political news, as everyone else is. It's just like I just live in a different place.
Right.
And so that psychological separation from the United States has not happened yet. And I have very mixed feelings about that.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Um because there is this psychological separation that I think needs to happen first before I physically move, right? So the fact that you physically did it before, says something about, it's like, what, we out. Sometimes our body tells us it's like I don't know what you're gonna do, but this is what we doing, right?
No, I was like, Blaxit, Blaxit.
Right. you know, but yeah, it is there. There are times, I live in South Carolina, um, and and I haven't said this, I guess, publicly, but I used to, take my wife down to Charleston, as because it was a romantic place and all that kind of stuff. Take them to a nice restaurant and all that kind of stuff. We spent some time, and then we would, go back to North Carolina where we were at the time. Since I've moved to South Carolina, um, I visited Charleston, just like a day trip or something, and went through the markets and got sick.
Mhm.
And it was like someone is trying to tell me something. this is, and I, it was like, it's like how America has shown up for me
Mhm.
is that, the beauty, I don't want to say the facade, but maybe that is the word, right? um, but, um, but underneath all of that is, is crying out for freedom, liberty, voice, all the things that within our strategy, right? Within our vote, that that sometimes in order for me to show up, at a polling place, I have to, in some case, have let that stuff go, right? You know what I mean? Just kind of suspend reality and kind of act as if that we're just talking about two personalities,
Mhm.
and it's way more than that.
Yeah.
And so the the reality for me of, you know I don't want to say how long should I fight. It's like sometimes it feels like, okay, get in the fight, and then we'll see how long. Am I willing to die? Am I willing? All these extremes that I take, that I take myself through. But at the same time, I believe that, it came up when I was going to run for president. I believe that I am, um, a part of a conversation after the riots, after
Mhm.
the fight, because I think too often we're we're just like, what, I'm going to fight, we're going to riot, we're going to protest, we're going to do all that, and there's no strategy that after we get their attention, what are we going to do, right? Or whoever they are, right? And I think, and it's like, and this may sound very, um, not, inclusionness, or I don't understand, but it's like, I'm tired of having my survival be dependent on the kindness of white people.
Yes.
And that's what it feels like it's coming down to.
Yeah.
That will enough kind white people see that, not just my house is burning, you know, but my life, my the generation, my people, and it has to be more than my vote, and so like I said, I'm trying to to be with everyone, and kind of, and it's like beyond the kumbaya, right?
Yeah.
But really get people to the reality that, um, this is be this is beyond personalities here,
Yes.
and stop reducing it to this.
Yes. I have arrived not too long ago to the same conclusion that that my liberation and my freedom and the freedom of the people that I love are is not going to be dependent on the kindness of white people, because that's not how we get free. We can work with them, but that is not where our liberation and freedom comes from. And it comes from us doing the inner work, but then also working with each other and others to do the outer work. But
Right.
that inner work has to come first. And what has upset me is that so much of the scholarly and popular research around racism is done helping white people manage their feelings
Hmm.
and reviewing their personal and family histories, and there's so little to help Black people who have been affected by racism and for whom the fight lives in our body to deal with and process that. So through my writing and filmmaking, I'm experimenting with ways to I don't want to call it healing, because I hate when people say, "Oh, well, you're healing from your racist trauma," and it's like, you don't heal from racist trauma. Like, that
Mm,
doesn't happen. That's a myth. But processing it and working through it so that maybe I can embody a model of something that I can share what I've learned with other people, so that I can learn from other people and see what they're doing. For me, that's the work right now, because I can't deal with that other business. And as you said, it goes beyond voting. That's why I said in the beginning that voting is a strategy and a survival, but I also said it was an ancestral marker.
great. Wow. Well, we can talk about this for hours because it feels like within this conversation, and I and I typically don't say that. I think that ancestors are trying to like help us, and kind of give us some things. There is some things that are coming to me, and there's this piece because sometimes um, you mentioned about Barack Obama using hope and change as the aspiration, and I kind of resisted that language within the political context because I felt that it was manipulating because I want to have my hope beyond politics, my politics. I want to see um, love and change and transformation beyond, a slogan, and so, yes, I bought in and I got it. I got it. But there was a part of me that wanted to resist that. And, and what I'm feeling right now is there still is hope. There still is opportunity. There's still a chance. And as long as I value the strategy, um, and, um, and everything that the vote represents, the more that our ancestors will be cheering us on throughout the um, not just election season, um, but through the community, engagement that is now a part of what we do after we vote. So, is there any last thing that you wanted to say before we close?
I think you said everything perfectly. I do want to make a plug for Ted Wachtel's Citizens Assemblies. Our next meeting, I think, is called A Nation in One Room, where we do talk about gathering together and exchanging, learning about a specific issue, and making decisions about complex issues. That's going to be November 21st. We'll have Eventbrite tickets online. You can always check out buildinganewreality.com for more details about citizens assemblies, and to think about voting is definitely important, and what we do beyond our vote is also equally important, if not more.
Wonderful, and I will put that link in the comments so people will have access to that. Thank you very much. It is always a pleasure. I'm sure there will be another trigger word or one word that I feel that I only need to talk to you, and so I'll reach out and see if you're available.
Sounds wonderful.
But blessings, my friend.
Thank you.
Oh boy, there is, you know, I honestly didn't think that there would be a level of calmness after having the conversation around vote, right? One, because as much as I try not to, I get so caught up in the personalities, of it. But there's so much more that we can do and that I believe that can happen. Take a breath and release it. Give it back. I hope this conversation has added value to your day, and that you, if you haven't voted yet, that you get the information that you need to make um, a choice, a decision, um, so people can hear your voice. And then you stay in the conversation. Because sometimes we just say things and just stop talking and allow other people to do things for us. There is, by voting, I think it is an opportunity for us to say something and keep saying something, and it'll cause us to do something. I hope you reach out to me at iamwilliambrown.com to have conversations like this to help you be yourself and live your life. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next time on One Word Conversations.